One of the most common criticisms of the Borg Collective, at least now, is that many people would say that they were neutered in the Trek universe. The once most powerful entity in the galaxy was little more than a threat of the week now. But the question is that actually so? And if it is it unwarranted? We have had multiple new episodes across several series explore the Borg and the consequences of Janeway's virus after the destruction of Unimatrix 001. For the purposes of this analysis, I'm just going to be looking at the newer content and its implications. I won't be doing a complete breakdown of the Borg because I don't really feel like I have a lot to add to what I've already done. So if you're interested in my previous works on the topic, I'll include those video essays in the description below. But for the too long didn't watch version of those essays, we left the Borg after the defeat to Captain Janeway, the destroyer of lives and bringer of pain. At that point, it had been questioned if the virus destroyed the entire collective completely, and I theorized that the Borg really hadn't been destroyed, just severely weakened. And it turns out that I was, half right. The virus caused a lot of devastation to the Borg Collective and forced them into a position of rebuilding. But on top of that, the advancements that were brought to the Federation by Janeway, along with the forced technological innovation thanks to the Dominion War, meant that the Federation, and by extension Starfleet, was slowly starting to find its way to a certain parity with the Collective. And given how the Federation loves to share, even to their own detriment, a rising tide lifts all boats. At least in this context. The Klingon Empire, Romulan Star Empire, Ferengi, and others would see technological advancements as well. But we'll get to that. First, let's focus on the Borg and their exploits. With their defeat at Sector 001 and the destruction of Unimatrix 1, the Collective appears to have more focused their forces to expansion and assimilation within the Delta Quadrant itself. This makes a lot of sense when you consider that the Borg, acting as a computer, would assess that the need to reinforce what was lost is, a necessity, as well as adding more biological and technological distinctiveness to their hive. Ultimately, achieving these goals in the Delta Quadrant would mean that they'd be able to attack the Alpha Quadrant. The expansion of the Delta Quadrant would be startling when we break it down, so let's just get into it. Engineer's log, stardate 476344.44. I've lost count of how long I've been stuck on this assimilated planet, but I've received a message from the Admiral that he has big news. I'm hopeful that he will find a way to get me off this planet. Luckily, I have found a way to get this archaic device working so that I can do my logs that no one will probably watch. I'm probably gonna die alone. Oh, that's him right now. Maybe there is a chance.
Engineer Hernandez. Good to see you, old chum.
It's Gomez. It's always been in.
Sorry, I'm on an away mission, and I have great news for you.
You're about to beam me off this planet?
What? Oh no. Son, you can now refer to me as Lord the Admiral.
What?
Lord the Admiral Sanchez Perez Rodriguez.
Gomez.
See, while you were out on an extended vacation.
Weird way of saying stranded on a planet completely ravaged and assimilated by the Borg.
I, as a representative of Starfleet, made a deal with established titles.
So...
What is established titles? I'm glad you asked.
Established Titles is a fun and novel way to preserve the natural woodlands of Scotland while helping global reforestation efforts. It is a project based on a historic Scottish custom where landowners are referred to as lairds or lords and ladies in English. Title packs give you at least 1 square foot of dedicated land on a private estate in Edelston, Scotland, and an official certificate with a crest. It makes an amazing last-minute gift. Established Titles is actually running a Black Friday sale, plus if you use the code LORE, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/lore to get your gifts now and help support the channel. So this is like some kind of charity that you're a part of?
Exactly, Minguez, and it's not just me that can do it. Anyone can join and be a part of established titles and help save the Earth.
Is there a plan to help me escape?
Don't worry, we're working on it. But for right now, we're off to continue the kingdom. Come now, people. EstablishedTitles.com/lore. Get a discount, start a kingdom. And if we get 200 people, maybe we'll save them. Maybe.
The crew is enjoying an evening on Sikaris.
To put it simply, it is frightening how far the Borg expand. Now, to get into that, my math may be a little off here and there, but I think I'm going to get the point across when I start getting really into it. We know that Voyager can traverse roughly 1,000 light years every year. This is said at the beginning of the series in Star Trek Voyager. Now, if we take that and look at Season 1 when they meet the Sicarans, which is roughly halfway through the season, that puts them at roughly 500 light years from the caretaker array. The ship would then continue on its journey, and they'd encounter the Borg about the 4-year mark, or end of Season 3, beginning of Season 4. Now, not including any craziness that would have gained them a lot of territory over the season. This is just assuming that they're using straight warp and they're not pushed by some kind of entity or go through some wormhole or anything like that. Let's just assume, and this is being conservative, that they only used warp drive. That means that they traversed roughly 3,500 light years, give or take, from the Sicarans. Now here's the scary part.
This one is from after your time. A spatial trajector. The Borg acquired the technology after assimilating Sicarians.
Ultimately, we know that the Sicarans are assimilated by the Borg, which means the reach of the collective would be at least to that point. And again, this is not assuming that they found any kind of special wormhole or got pushed by any entity. It's just a straight 3,500 light years. It is possible there is an episode that I missed that makes it longer than that. For context, Federation space is roughly 8,000 light years from one side to the other. So the collective would have added territory at half the size of the Federation, which doesn't include what they already had. And as they continue to expand towards the caretaker array, they would be gaining all of this knowledge and technology. Every species the crew of Voyager met, from, again, effectively the Sicarans to the Borg collective, would now live in a dystopian, nightmarish existence, either as Borg or trying to keep away from being assimilated by the Borg. Thanks so much, Janeway. Anyway, so we know that they expanded massively in the Delta Quadrant, but largely pulled back in the Alpha Quadrant. This is, in my estimation, due to two factors. First, as I stated, they were licking their wounds and have largely found that excursions into the Alpha Quadrant isn't really a wise idea. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't have a presence, it was just something that was done sparingly. Secondly, as I've also pointed out, the Alpha Quadrant was coming into parity with the Borg. They were now literally constructing vessels out of Borg components. In fact, the Borg were such a non-entity that the Romulan Republic, the government that rose from the ashes of the destroyed Romulan Star Empire, was literally gutting a Borg cube for all of its technology. To be fair, there's obviously more to that story in the plot of Star Trek Picard, which is outside the scope of this essay, but the Borg were obviously leaving their vessels to be pilfered and pillaged, and they weren't able to actually defend themselves. However, as I had kind of alluded to before, there are some advantages to this. They would be able to focus on better technologies and other ways to fight the Federation. They gained in technology not just with the Sicarans, but also with time travel. This is not only observed in Star Trek First Contact, but in Star Trek Picard, where the Queen was aware of alternate timelines and when things were changed. Now, I know many will scoff at this, but it actually makes a modicum of sense and is consistent with what we see with the Borg historically. With their ability to manipulate time, it would lead to reason that they'd have a way to calculate when changes occurred. And it's likely they've played a role when it comes to time travel and the whole cold time war, so it's really what we've seen throughout Trek. Alright, now we have the Borg focused on the Delta Quadrant and effectively barely any presence in the Alpha Quadrant. So let's look at the Alpha Quadrant powers. I've mentioned it several times, but from what we can tell, the Alpha Quadrant doesn't just sit on their laurels. Technology would be created for two purposes: the destruction of the Dominion and to stop the tide of the Borg collective. We would see the successes of this at the Battle of Sector 001, but ultimately also in Star Trek Picard. We see that Starfleet has now come to a point where if the Borg appear, it's an even fight. This, again, is something that is natural and makes a lot of sense. It's pulled directly from Legacy Trek. It's where the story was naturally going. And this fact, unfortunately, makes a lot of people upset. I honestly think that a lot of this is from the nostalgia of Best of Both Worlds. The Borg were the big bads, and they were written so well that they could not be defeated. It was honestly a curb stomp every time a cube appeared. And now, through natural consequences of the Borg Collective being stupid and Starfleet being not stupid, the Borg were basically only a step or two above any other major villain the Federation would come across. Starfleet was even using Borg technology on their own ships, and even without that, they had created anti-Borg vessels. But, to be fair, here's a little taste of a video I'll be doing in the near future. When we first meet the Borg, it is likely they were a large threat to the Q, who could not, for whatever reason, take them on directly. After the fall of the Elorians, the Q would orchestrate a proxy war between the Federation and the Borg. This war would ultimately result in the Borg going from being chess players, kind of like the Q are, to simply being another piece on the board. But again, that's a video for another time. So what are your guys' thoughts? What do you think about the Borg? Don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and guys, I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.